$792,000.
And he asked you to write the checks out to who?
To him.
Him directly?
Him, Richard Alexander Murdaugh.
Instead of what?
Instead of PMPED or the law firm.
Which would be the normal practice?
Yes, sir.
All right. I'm going to show you what's been marked as 345 and see if you recognize this document. States 345.
I do.
All right. What is that?
So this is a check that was initially written to Richard Alexander Murdaugh, Esquire, for $600,000 on March 10th, 2021. This says fees on the bottom. This would be the fees on the gentleman's case for payable to his firm, which Alec told me to write to him. This check was voided and rewritten into two separate checks.
All right.
It's marked void.
All right, Your Honor, this time I would move to admit States 345 into evidence.
Your Honor, we do not have any additional objections to that document.
It's admitted.
All right. And this check is made out for how much?
$600,000.
All right, and again, there were two cases, so there were going to be two separate checks, is that correct?
Yes, sir. This was just the fees on the gentleman's case.
And that was going to be how much total?
The total was $792.
But this one is?
$600.
And then the one for the other one?
$192.
$192, okay. All right, and so you initially write this check. Did you deliver this to the defendant, or what happened?
I didn't deliver any of the checks. I believe he had somebody pick them up that day from his office, a runner or something like that. But no, so this check was voided out, and we rewrote two separate checks made payable to Richard Alexander Murdaugh.
Why did you do that? Why did you void this one for $600 and then write two separate checks?
When I called Alec and told him, or when we were talking and I told him I thought the checks would be ready, he instructed me that he was doing three separate annuities, and so it would need to be in three checks, and that this check would need to be made out into two different checks that totaled $600,000.
His reason he was doing a bunch of different annuities, huh?
Yes, sir. It wasn't all going into the same annuity or the same place.
So you recut into two checks, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, I'm going to show you what's been marked as States 346 and see if you recognize that set of documents, please.
Yes, sir, I do.
All right, just flip through it real quick.
Can't even tell you what they are.
Well, just flip through it first, if you would, please.
Yes, sir, I recognize all of this.
All right, and tell the jury what those are, please.
So the top document is the $192,000 check dated March the 10th, 2021, made payable to Richard Alexander Murdaugh, Esquire. And on the bottom it says fees. That would have been the fees on the ladies' loss of consortium case.
Okay.
The back of it, the rest of it's just the back of the check. Looks like it's endorsed Bank of America deposit only. A signature that looks like Alec, but it's kind of scribbled and says Bank of America.
Okay.
The next page is a check for $225,000 dated March 10th, 2021, payable to Richard Alexander Murdaugh, Esquire. And on the bottom it says fees. This would be part of the rewrite of that $600,000 check.
All right.
Same type of endorsement paperwork on the back. And then the third check is a check dated March 10th, 2021 for $375,000 made payable to Richard Alexander Murdaugh, Esquire, and on the bottom it says fees. And that would be the second part of the rewrite of that $600,000 check for the fees in the gentleman's case.
All right. Your Honor, at this time I would move to admit States 346 into evidence.
We don't have any additional objections, Your Honor.
They're admitted.
All right, I'm going to show you what's been marked as States 347, see if you recognize those two documents, please.
I do.
All right, tell me what those are.
So these are two checks from my firm made payable to Peters Murdaugh Parker, Ellsworth, and Dietrich. The memo part is redacted, but I know what these are. So these were cost reimbursement checks in both of these cases. One check for the gentleman's case and one check for the wife's case. They're dated May 13th of 2021, made payable to the law firm. One of them is for $14,619.13, and one of them is for the same amount except for 14 cents.
All right, tell me the date on those expense checks, please.
May 13th of 2021.
And go back if you would, and let's again remind the jury what the date of the fee checks are, particularly after they were recut at the defendant's request.
March 10th of 2021.
All right. Let me put these up on the screen real quick. And Your Honor, I will move in States 347, please.
No objection?
They're admitted. All right, we're at States 346, and this is the check for $192,000, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And the date is March 10th, is that right?
Yes, sir. That's the day that all three lawyers' checks were cut to be paid.
Same date of that text the jury has seen, correct?
Yes, sir.
Next page, this is the check for how much?
$225,000.
And that's part of the 600K?
Yes, sir.
Same date?
Yes, sir, March the 10th.
And that's your signature on there?
It is.
Going back to the first one, you said that looks like whose handwriting?
Yes, sir.
Whose?
Alex.
Right there on the second check on the back, that looks like whose handwriting to you?
I mean, the top left of it looks like Alex's signature.
Okay. And then finally, this last check, that's the 375, this part of the 600,000?
Yes, sir.
Is that your signature right there on the check?
It is.
And the same date?
Yes, sir, March 10th.
And do you recognize that signature at all?
I mean, it looks like Alex, but I mean,
Best as you can see on this
best I
copy.
can tell, yes, sir.
Okay. All right, what, those particular checks, what did you, once those were cut, the defendant's been texting you about it, what did you do? Once you recut them?
I think, as I said a little earlier, at some point in time, we were having a phone conversation, and I told him that I was on the road, that if I got back and was able to sign them, I'd let him know. And I ultimately did make it back to the office, I believe, that day, was able to get the checks signed, and either called him and said they're ready, and he said, I'll send somebody up to get them, or maybe I called him as I was going back to the office, but before I actually signed them and said, hey, I will be back to sign them, and they'll be ready. And he said, well, I'm gonna send somebody up to get them.
Okay.
And so they would have come up. I think he had a runner come up that day that would have picked up a package that had those checks. I don't remember exactly for sure, but generally it's gonna be those checks, a cover letter, and a package that has a partial disbursement sheet. Our client had signed off on allowing the fees to go ahead and be paid. Then, while we were waiting on some liens to resolve themselves, some costs to come in, and some things like that. So our client had signed off on a partial settlement statement, and I would have provided that.
The voided check we saw before, and these checks all have the same date, is that correct?
Yes, sir, they do.
All right, and do you recall anything about that? Did you call him up and say, hey, great news, I got it taken care of? He said, wait. How did that go down?
I don't remember. I don't remember how many different conversations we had that day, whether it was over, one conversation or two conversations. I don't remember. But at some point, he instructed me that the $600,000 check needed to be made into separate checks.
And he sent somebody to pick them up?
I didn't mean to cut you off. We talk a lot every day. And so we probably had multiple conversations that day. But at some point, he instructed me to do that.
He's one of your best friends.
Yes, sir, very much. Not just my best friend, Mr. Waters. I mean, our families were close. I mean, our kids, our wives, we're close.
You had a friendship with Maggie, too.
Yes, sir, very much.
You had a friendship with Paul, too.
Yes, sir.
Got a friendship with Buster, too.
Yes, sir. Haven't been able to have that since. Not like it was, but yes, sir. Hope to one day. But, yes, sir.
Why didn't you disperse the fee checks the same day? Do you recall?
The fee checks
I
were
mean, I'm
dispersed.
sorry, my bad.
Cost
The
checks.
expense checks, the cost checks.
Yes, sir. We were still waiting on some costs to come in, and we had several experts in that case, and it's not abnormal to have costs that come in after a settlement or after a verdict that you reach. Sometimes you're taking depositions up to the last minute. Sometimes you have experts that are working, they're going to send you their bill for their trial time. And so a lot of times those costs will come in. I think our client had authorized us to hold some money back in escrow for an expected cost. And so we had a lot of bills that were coming in even into late April.
You mentioned that the defendant had said something about his exposure in the boat accident lawsuit as a reason for structuring these fees.
Yes, sir.
Did he say any more about that?
Not in that conversation when he asked me to write the checks directly to him. We had had some other conversations, and I don't remember if they were before this or after this. Honestly, I think they were after, but I don't remember for sure, where he had just said that there was, some fights going on between insurance companies.
When the defendant asked you to do this unusual step and write the fees direct to him, and you said you trusted him, correct?
Yes, sir.
What was your general perception of his law practice, of his wealth, of his financial security, knowing him as well as you did? What was your perception of that?
Big firm, big reputation. Alec had a big reputation. I thought he made a whole lot more money than I did. Everything I knew from the way his partners treated him, the type of cases I saw him working on with them, the type of cases I knew he worked on with me, that he was, one of the biggest dogs in that firm, one of the biggest producers they had. Seemed to own a lot of things, do a lot of things, spend money. Didn't ever seem to have problems. And I knew I was associating him and his firm on very good cases throughout the years, and I knew other lawyers that were. It just seemed like they were doing very well, and that he specifically was doing very well.
And is that perception that you had of him one of the reasons why you trusted him? That there was no shenanigans going on?
I don't know that that's the main reason. I trusted him because I knew him and had dealt with him personally and professionally for a long time. But I had no idea if he was having money problems. I would have never suspected that his asking me to write checks to him had anything to do with money problems on his behalf. Nothing gave that appearance. So, that could have factored into the back, but mostly it's just I knew the guy and I trusted him. And he wasn't asking me to do anything that raised any flags with me. He told me he had cleared it with his firm and with his partners. I didn't have any reason to doubt that.
I'm going to put States 347 up on the screen. And what are these again?
That's a cost reimbursement check in one of those cases. I can't tell you which one it is.
All right. And then if we go 2 pages back, this is the other check?
Yes, sir, in the other case, cost reimbursement.
All right. And those are the same amount?
1 penny difference. I think Alec sent me the cost total, and I just split them evenly between the 2 cases.
And what's the date on that check, those checks?
May 13th of 2021, which I believe would be the time, obviously, we wrote the checks, and they would have been mailed to his office shortly thereafter.
And you said that there was a reason why these came a couple of months later?
Yes,
Y'all
sir.
were waiting for some information?
Waiting on cost to finalize up. Instead of writing multiple checks as cost came in, we just kind of wait sometimes till the final bill's received.
Is that your signature on these checks?
Yes, sir.
And those would have been mailed to Alex Law Firm, correct?
That's the general practice, yes, sir, is we mail them to the firm. And I don't know any reason why these wouldn't have been done differently.
In May of 2021, did your office, after these checks were mailed, did your office receive any communication from the defendant's law firm?
My paralegal, Vicky, received an email from Alex Paralegal,
Okay.
Annette.
And tell me about that. What was the communication? It was received from Annette.
Yes, sir, from Annette Griswold, Alex Paralegal.
All right, your paralegal, Vicky, received a communication from Annette Griswold, the defendant's paralegal.
Yes, sir, Vicky got an email from Annette that said, hey, we got the, something to the effect of, hey, we received the cost checks, either why no fee checks or where are the fee checks.
Okay. And did Vicky respond to that?
She did.
And what did she respond?
She responded to Annette that the reason the fee checks weren't included is because they had already been paid to Alec, that he had already received the fee checks.
Was that on about May 19th, 2021?
I'd have to look at the email, but I believe so, yes, sir.
Did Vicky raise any issue with you at this point? Did you know anything about it at this point?
No, sir. I was in trial the following week in Hampton, actually all week long, and I was preparing for that. Vicky sent that email back. She didn't notify me about that actually until all this blew up, and I turned all that over to SLED after we found it, after all this blew up in September.
Moving into late May 2021, did this matter that Annette was raising with your firm come to your attention?
It did.
And tell me.
And it wasn't late May, it was the first part of June.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 348 and let you take a look at that real quick before we move on.
Sure,
See if you recognize that.
I do.
Tell me what that is.
So this is this is an email string that begins on May the 27th from Jeannie Seckinger, which is the bookkeeper or accountant in Alex Law Firm. And it's an email from Jeannie to Annette Griswold, Alex Paralegal, on May the 27th, where she telling Annette that she got the expense checks and it didn't match their records, that Alec thought he had more outstanding costs but can't say what, and was asking Annette to reach out to my office, to Vicky, to get some more information. Okay. And then it looks like Annette forwarded that email to Vicky on May the 27th. Vicky was on vacation and did not come back in until the following week.